Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Poste, I just want to echo what has already been said, is there are many on this committee who have been waiting for documents for a long, long time, particularly some from the Obama administration years. We really would like to get those documents as soon as possible. I want to make sure that that is clearly communicated. I understand the difficulty with the requests going up. I get that, but the task is the task and needs to be handled. Mr. Epp, let me go to you. How many people at the EPA work on FOIA?
So our annual report indicates that there are approximately 100 full-time employees who work on FOIA and approximately another 100 full-time FTEs. So those are partial time.
All right. So does every office within the EPA have a FOIA office, every department?
Every of the major program divisions has a FOIA program. Okay.
Is it adequate enough to respond to the requests?
Well, we have been responding to requests at approximately 60% of the requests we respond to within the 20-day time period. But we also, at the end of fiscal year 2018, had a substantial backlog.
Okay. And do you have plans to deal with that backlog?
We have a lot of plans to deal with that backlog. As I was listing in my prepared remarks and in my opening statement, we have started a reorganization of the FOIA program. We have created a centralized national FOIA office. We are looking at ways of centralizing other aspects of the program, and yes, we have.
When will those ideas be implemented?
We have already started implementing those activities. So the reorganization of the regional council's offices are going to waterfall forward starting in this month.
What kind of requests are coming in? Is it changing? And in other words, are we having more requests from reporters, from members of the public, from advocacy groups? Are we seeing a change in the request?
So we've seen a change in terms of, in 2017 and 2018, we had approximately 1,000 more requests each year than we had in the prior year. We've also seen that those requests have been concentrated more in the Office of the Administrator. One year it was 368% more than year 2016, and the other year it was 415% more than that base year of 2016. We have the data to look at particular requesters. I have not broken that out. I haven't done an analysis of that.
Are you able to?
We would be able to.
Would you get that back to us?
We can work with,
just for curiosity.
With the committee on those sorts of requests.
Okay, thank you. What about complex requests? Are you seeing an increase in the complex?
We have noticed, at least particularly in the Office of the Administrator, some increase in complexity in a number of different ways. Requests that ask for all communications, for example, without any narrowing of it, as well as requests that have multiple subparts and that, as a result, produce large document collections that we must review.
Have those complex requests increased with the Trump administration?
We have noticed that increase over time, in particular in the last couple of years.
Okay. Can you give me some examples of the numbers of responsive records in a complex, like what are we talking about?
So we have one particular request right now that we've been in the process of assembling and collecting the documents for it. We have not completed that collection, but right now the workspace in the relativity document review software has over 139,000 documents in it. And of course, that's not pages, that's documents. Each document will have multiple pages. So we're talking a very substantial amount of material to review for that particular.
Okay, so a quick comparison, I'm running out of time here. How long does it take on an average just to do a simple FOIA versus a complex request?
So our simple FOIA requests, as I mentioned, we've approximately 60% of our requests we respond to within the 20-day time period. Our other requests, like I mentioned, we have a significant backlog, and some of those are months and or years.
Okay, thank you very much. I yield back, Mr.
The committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to to declare a recess of the committee at any time. The full committee hearing is convening to examine the compliance of federal agencies with FOIA. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to give an opening statement. The committee is holding this hearing on transparency under the Trump administration during Sunshine Week. Sunshine Week is the time each year when we focus on the need for greater transparency in our government. In 1966, Congress enacted the Freedom of Information Act so the American people could better understand the decisions being made by their government. FOIA is also critical to understanding who is influencing those decisions and how those decisions will affect their daily lives. Today, we will hear from Ms. Melanie Hice, the Director of the Office of Information Policy at the Department of Justice. DOJ is responsible for carrying out FOIA implementation across the executive branch. In my opinion, DOJ needs to do a much better job because we're seeing far too much information being delayed and even withheld. Earlier this week, during Sunshine Week kickoff event, Jesse Panuccio, the Principal Deputy Associate Attorney General and Chief FOIA Officer for the DOJ, said this during a speech, and I quote, "Unfortunately, as with everything in life, there are excesses and there are excesses strain the system. Some groups have turned FOIA into a means of generating attorneys' fees or attempting to shut down policymaking," end of quote. This statement is deeply troubling. It sounds like DOJ is framing requests for information as obstructions. The Trump administration should be operating with a presumption of openness, as the law now requires, rather than maligning FOIA requesters who are simply seeking the truth. We also will hear today from Acting Director of the National FOIA Office for Environmental Protection Agency, Tim Epp. Last year, our committee uncovered troubling issues with the way EPA was responding to FOIA requests in an investigation of former Administrator Scott Pruitt and his senior staff. Chief of Staff stated during a transcribed interview with our committee staff that EPA staff were referring, and I quote, "politically charged," end of quote, FOIA requests to political appointees for review. He also explained that certain requests were being deliberately delayed, and today we will investigate whether these tactics are still being used. Finally, also testifying today is Acting Deputy Chief of FOIA Officer from the Department of Interior, Rachel Spector. On December 28th, during the government shutdown, the department proposed a new rule that would make it harder for requesters to obtain information. Last week, I sent a letter to the acting secretary raising concerns about the proposed rule, and I was joined by Senators Patrick Leahy, Senator Chuck Grassley, and Senator John Cornyn. That letter, as you can see, was bipartisan, and oversight of FOIA compliance should always be bipartisan. In 2013, when I was the ranking member of this committee, I worked with our Republican chairman at the time, Darrell Hice, to introduce a FOIA reform bill. For 3 long, hard years, we worked together to advance this bipartisan bill through the Congress. And then with the help of Senator Cornyn and Senator Leahy, we got it over the finish line. President Obama signed the FOIA Improvement Act into law in 2016. I'm grateful to the many members of this committee who sponsored the legislation, including my Republican colleagues, Mr. Hice from Georgia and Mr. Gosar from Arizona. The FOIA Improvement Act is a prime example of how members of Congress from both parties can work together to achieve positive results for the American people. The law made a lot of important changes, but the Trump administration, unfortunately, is failing to fully comply with the requirements of the new law. Some agencies, including EPA, have not updated their regulations. Other agencies still have not published data on FOIA compliance for the year 2018. The Department of the Interior did release its data online, but it shows that the department proactively disclosed 58% less data than the last full year of the Obama administration. I know that there are FOIA officers across the executive branch watching this hearing this morning. I want to say to them that I know that you need more resources and more support for the work you do. So let me be clear. This hearing will not be the end of our work as a committee on these issues. We will fight to bring greater transparency to all operations of our government. And with that, I yield to the distinguished ranking member of this